Hey everyone, in this video, I want to go over the basics, the beginning of DIY, what you can do on your car, save time, money, and build confidence so that you can go to the next level. You know, you always start at something what you consider easy and minor so that you can move on to doing things like brakes, suspension. These are all things that will build your confidence so that you can take care of your own car and maintenance. And trust me, your mind will slowly start to be more relaxed about things because you are in charge of it. So let's go over simple things to start with: cabin air filter, airbox filter, and even your own oil changes. Think about how much time you spend while you're sitting there waiting for your car to be done, and you're hoping it's done correctly. You assume it's done correctly, but there's a percentage of us that have that backfire on us, unfortunately, because everyone is learning. Why don't you put it in your own hands? Learn how to do it yourself. Let's get into it. So we're going to talk about the air filter first. Basically, I'm not going to go into depth what it does, but all it does is take the fresh air from outside and it feeds the engine because the engine needs air. But if that's dirty, you're going to get sluggish running, could even get stalling. Maintenance is what this is for. It's probably about every 20, 25,000, 30,000 you can change this air filter. And it depends on the environment. Dirt roads, you live in the country, a lot of driving like that, you're going to have to do it a lot more than just average city driving or highway driving. But I want to start with there's three types. There's European import cars, there's Asian import cars, and then there's domestic cars. And they all do different designs on the airbox. But whatever you own, you can simply do it with easy tools you might have around your house. Phillips head screwdriver, flathead screwdriver, and a Torx T20 is a little domestic vehicles. And then you have your Asian imports. They put a Phillips head on top, and sometimes that strips out. So I like to use the 8mm socket because then it's grabbing that bolt head and it's just spinning it out. They do break, so be careful. But if you are the regular person that does the maintenance on it and you start doing it, you're going to keep track of that. You're not going to over-tighten it. You're not going to cross-thread it. You're going to pay attention. So it will always be working perfectly for you. So let's get into this one. And this does have the Phillips head on it, which I never will use because it just strips out. It's so much simpler just to use an 8mm socket. And you're just going to reverse them. Now, some cars, they actually leave it so that you can leave this part in. It has like a lock mechanism. See that? It won't come out, but it's disconnected. That way I'm not going to lose them. It's not going to place up here and drop down. And you just don't lose the parts, which is great. You don't have to take the whole airbox completely off either, but you want to pay attention to what's around it. So now that I have the base of the airbox unbolted, it can lift up. You can feel it lifting up. The air filter's underneath. I'm not going to start taking everything off. I'm going to start from down here and see what I can get for a flex. Now, it's nice because, like I said, the Asian import will always do a hex head usually on top of the Phillips. And the Phillips is just usually always stripped out, or I'll end up stripping it out. Then it just makes life miserable. So right here's a throttle body. We're just going to take that air duct right off, like that. Let's take this side of the hose off. And maybe I can get that hose to loosen up from that air filter cover. Now when you get to something like this and you're like, man, this is not going to move, I take a flathead screwdriver and I gently pry back and forth till I get it to come off. Because no need to get hurt, and just make sure you don't over pry. See, now we can move that out of the way. Now here is the airbox. I have a connector here. If you ever have an electronic piece that looks like this with a flat connector, probably has 6 wires in it, that is a mass airflow sensor. But I'm going to leave it attached. I'm not going to rip it. I'm just going to leave it attached, set it aside, and now we have the air filter is out in the open. Well, look, it's broken. This is all things that you're going to see, and you're going to say, wow, I've never done my air filter, but look what I just did. Someone did this to my car. This air filter, I'm going to take it out, and I'll show you this, what I'm talking about. Look at that. It has been crushed for how many miles? This part over here, it's not even seated right. And this is what you're looking for. Look at all that dirt. You'll find mice nests. There's all sorts of things you find in the airbox, but that can also cause your car not to run right. So even when you say the easiest items you can do, they actually contribute to everything in the car. An air filter replacement is necessary. Now before I would tackle this job, obviously, I would have my new part with me, which is easy for us because we just get everything from 1aauto.com, and you can too. And we carry thousands of air filters. So I'm going to go grab our new air filter and show you how to install this and what to do it 100%, not just take a part out, put a part in, how to make sure it's done the best you can do it. So all I'm going to use is the basic shop vac, and you're just going to clean all the sand out and all the little nuggets, like there's a couple of acorn shells in here. So let's turn this on and clean this up. All right, so now I'm just going to show you our new filter and the one I took out. So always match the shapes up, make sure they're right. But look at that rubber seal, how it's supposed to be seated and how it was seated. Look at that over there. Air and dirt's going to get in. It's not checking your work, but you know what? Now you're going to do it yourself, so you're going to know. So you can see the cutout and the design. We're going to place that right down in there and feel it just firmly sit. That's all we're looking for. Now you could, at this point, take this piece that someone has broken and you could tape it or let it sit for a while, put some glue on it, and I'm just going to place my air filter cover right down. See how it goes on so much easier than coming off, right? See how easy it's sat right in all the spots, all the bolts line up. See if I can reach them by hand. I'm just going to start them, and there's 4 of them. That's it. Now, before I tighten that down, I want to make sure I get my air hose attached. That way, if anything happens that I need to move this, I don't have to unbolt it again. So I'm just basically going to what we call reverse the procedure. Now, it gives a nice little cutout, shows you that notch. That's where that's supposed to sit. So that way I know I have to turn it, and then I'm going to put it right on that throttle body entrance. And we have another notch here. We're going to use that. And make sure it's all the way down and flush, not halfway. That's not going to work. Now, this is what I was talking about earlier. Any vent hoses that are attached. See, just wiggling this, it came right out. So you want to confirm that you're going to put that back together. It has to be seated. This does have a clamp, so I'm going to reach down below and squeeze that clamp and see that it's seated. Flush, everything's good. The top part of it, more than likely, is just a guide, so it doesn't twist and fall off. But it's all seated now, everything's good. Now we can tighten this down, and don't forget to tighten those clamps because that is probably the #1 item that I see through the years, even techs. They get called away or they stop and move on to something else, and they never tighten these. And you don't want to strip this. It's really kind of important. It's a connection to the lungs of the car, right? Snug it down, let it stop, and now we can tighten this one. So once you feel that stop, bottom out, that's it. Now I just switched over to my 8mm or 5/16 if you have domestic sockets. SAE is what they call them. And I'm not going to tighten it, but I'm going to go back and forth. This is something you should do whenever you're tightening any item. You even do it on wheels, but you want to go opposite of each other, back and forth, till it's snug, so that you don't have a gaping spot on one side. That can break things really easily, especially if they're aluminum or plastic or tin. It will just bend the tin. So you want to just go evenly all the way around before you snug them all up. And like I said, these are all basic tools that as a homeowner or even an apartment, you should have yourself. This is a 1/4-inch drive set. That's all you want. Real basic 1/4-inch drive. That's it. That's how quick that job can be done. So now we're going to transition into the inside of the car. So here we are on the passenger side of the car. And this is where most of the cabin air filters are located. Now, like I said, don't forget to check YouTube. Hopefully you'll see one of our videos. But it's going to show you where the location is for your car. And just want to show you how simple it is. So this car has what they call like a slow hydraulic arm that drops down. But they make it simple enough to just pop it off like that. All you do is grab it, the 2 doors, the side of the glove box, and go like this. Now if you have anything in it that has manuals, we're just going to place this on the floor. Now when you look inside here, you're going to see a long rectangle cover. Once again, very simple. 2 tabs. Sometimes they have a Phillips screw. I've seen them with pinch tabs, long pinch tabs, but this one, pretty simple. 2 pinch tabs on both sides, and I'll show you what it looks like. And then you just slide this like sleeve out. It's like a shelving. Let's see how dirty it is. I've seen worse. I've seen them with rodent droppings all over them. And I've actually seen them with the rodent in it. You just simply pop them out. And they actually have very easy installation markings on the filters themselves. There usually is going to be an arrow somewhere. And there it is. Airflow going down. So it's coming from the vents and going down. So you're going to place the arrows down. But look at that. Look how dirty that is. So now we're going to get our filter from 1A, and I'll show you how to install it. So now I'm going to match the arrows up. And as you can see, when you look on the inside of this rectangle holder, see this little space right here? There's one there and one there. That indicates that they want this part. So the hard, firm side is going to go on the sides. It's pretty self-sufficient in the sense of easily cannot do this wrong. And you're going to want to make sure that you get this filter to go over the top of that so it doesn't let any debris by. That's all. Good thing it's a filter, it's flexible. And just like that. Now we have the new air filter. We're going to install it. And you'll hear it click in there. And that's it. Now that the cabin filter's in there and that little casing's tabs are locked in, I'm going to push up the glove box here, and you're going to see a tab here, and there's one identical on the other side. You don't even have to squeeze them to push it back in. You'll just hear it click. Just like that. I'm going to put our manuals back in. And now I'm going to take this long arm. Now this arm is like a retracting arm, just like a drawer in your kitchen. It does a slow shut, and it just has a hook on it, and it clicks on. Then you just close your glove box. I always reopen them to make sure everything's working good. That's how simple that is. I have confidence that you can do it. Save that money and just feel good about yourself that you did it yourself. Now we're going to move on to the oil filter. I'm not going to do a whole oil change for you because I know for a fact this video is out there. But I'm going to talk about the oil filter locations and the proper tools that you should use and the proper way to do it. Some of you probably think I would never attempt this, but I'm here to tell you that you can do an oil change. Typical 4-cylinder engine, you're going to have usually an oil fill cap on top of the valve cover. Sometimes they have a little plastic port that comes out, it's all by itself. And then also try to locate your dipstick. Always find that before you do any work. Now, everyone that does oil changes all day long for a living has a routine. My routine is I leave the hood up. I take this cover off, and then on top of it, I'll pull the dipstick. This is a warning to me that there's no oil in this car, because when I'm done, after I put oil in it, the cap will be on, and that dipstick will be down all the way. So now, if I get called away, pulled away, come back an hour later, I'm not like, did I? Yeah, I could just start it up. Because if you leave the cover on, what if you forget? Then you have no engine, because you will destroy the engine. So now we're here under the engine. And like I've said, this is an Asian import. It's a 4-cylinder. Under any car, you're going to look for the oil pan. And it's usually located directly under where the top of that engine was. It won't be to a side. If you looked over here and saw a different style, smaller version of this, that's more likely the transmission pan. If you have a transmission pan, this particular car does not. But you're always going to look for the depth. It'll be a deeper, whether it's aluminum or tin, and a transmission pan is always going to be definitely thinner. It's not going to be as deep. The deeper pan will be the oil. Now you get your drain plug, and behind that drain plug is a drain plug gasket. You should always change that on every oil change. And on this particular car, the oil filter is right there. Take that filter down, and oil filters have different sizes. They come big for trucks sometimes. A bigger V8 will have a bigger diameter oil filter, and then you have little small ones like this little one on this car. So you're going to need different size oil filter wrenches. I can show you what that looks like. So here's a typical setup for a 4-cylinder. It's like 4.5 quarts of oil is what you're going to need. I only have 4 here. Nice little small filter. That's usually what you'll see on a 4-cylinder. And you've got all different types of choices of oil filter wrench, what we call oil filter wrenches. This one expands, claps on, 3/8 ratchet. And the same with this one. And you can use a wrench or a ratchet. Then they have the band style. This wraps around the whole filter housing and squeezes it and turns it off. But be careful. Remember, these are to remove the old filters. Never use them to tighten the filter because you could pinch that little piece of tin, that's really all it is, wrapped around that filter. And if you, a little mark that you think, oh, that looks fine, that oil will shoot right out under the pressure of the pump and you're going to lose all the oil right out underneath the car. Here's a wrench. I like to use a longer wrench because then I can really get the leverage I need. So now if you're worried about what are you going to do with the used oil, which we call waste oil, there's a couple of things you can do. So if you purchase them at a local parts store, you keep your receipt. But before you buy it, ask them if they take the old. I'm 90% sure they're supposed to take the old if you keep your receipt. So you could pour it into the catch pan and then pour it into each individual after they're emptied, right? Then you can bring it down there, dispose of it correctly. So the other thing you might be asking is, how do I know what filter, blah, 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 and what kind of oil? Well, the other good thing is if you look on our site, we'll give you the filter that's listed in under your vehicle. So now if you're wondering what grade oil, that means the weight of the oil. Now, the oil filter cap on top usually says it. Not all the time. Sometimes it's been replaced. So if it doesn't say it there, check your manual. That's been thrown out, right, 10 years ago. Believe it or not, the internet. Just punch in year, make, and model and say, what grade oil does my car take, or this car, and punch the car in, and it actually pops right up. And then also, don't forget your funnel. That's kind of important because even with the steadiest hands, you can make a mess up there when you're pouring that oil in. So I have just a universal one I've had for many years, as you can tell, and it just fits in all the fill holes, and you can just pour the oil in. I also like to, before I install the new oil filter, I like to prime it. That basically means pour the new fresh oil into it, fill it up, let it sit before I install it. That's just maybe old school, but it's what I've always done. And it just gives it that time where there's no dry cranking, just for a split second. That's me. So now we've loaded the car, and here comes where that funnel comes in play, right there like that. Make sure your funnel's in there firmly, and then you're gonna take your quart of oil, and you're just gonna, and I like to leave it in there while I get the other ones and open them up, because believe it or not, it just keeps residual draining in there. You might as well get every drop, right? Once you're done with your oil change, you're gonna take your funnel off, you're gonna cover it up. Don't forget to put the cover on. And you see right there, it does show you the oil type. Then I push my dipstick all the way down in, and we're gonna start the car. I will start it and let it run for about 2 minutes. If you have a gauge, you'll watch the oil gauge go up. If it does have an oil light, it will flash for a second. That's what that priming for that filter comes in for. And then it will go out. But I'll let it run, then I shut it off. I'll let it sit for 5 minutes because I want all the oil from the top of this engine, which is the head, to drain back down to the pan. With the engine off, you can pull your oil dipstick and you clean it. Then you're going to reinstall it. Now the key here is make sure it goes all the way down. And then pull it back out and take a reading. Now on this dipstick, it has dots. The top dot is full. You don't want to be above it. Too much oil, too much pressure, seals will leak. I'd rather be in between the two dots. That's safer for the engine, believe it or not, than overfull. So there you have it. There's the old filters that you saw me change. Now you know how to do it and how easy it can be. If you're not a subscriber, please subscribe, and don't forget to ring that bell because then it turns on all your notifications and you won't miss any future videos. Thanks for watching. Priming it so that there's no time stop. I gotta talk about it. I gotta talk about it. Show your friends and family. Don't forget, DIY builds confidence.